Tens of millions of dollars in lost revenue. YouTube views down nearly 50%, and one of the biggest Clash Royale streamers walking away.
Probably not going to be streaming too much Clash until they fix the game, bro.
That level of damage leaves a trail, and if you follow it, you don't just find one mistake, you find a pattern. A pattern where player experience slowly stopped being the priority. To understand how that pattern formed, you have to look at what Clash Royale used to be. Before heroes, before evolutions, and even before champions, the game was far simpler, and it was built around community feedback. Balance changes, progression tweaks, even major updates were often direct responses to how players felt. Back then, feedback wasn't left unanswered. For example, battles used to cost gold. Every single match chipped away at your gold, and players hated it. It punished experimentation and made losing feel worse than it needed to be. So Clash Royale removed it entirely. The game instantly felt more accessible because you could actually play without worrying about your gold. Progression had similar problems. Level 6 legendaries were absurdly difficult to obtain, so difficult that they felt more like status symbols than playable cards. The community pushed back and Supercell listened. Level 6 legendaries were removed, locking them at level 5 and bringing them back to the realm of something you could somewhat realistically work toward instead of endlessly chase. And when players said epics were bottlenecking progression, the response wasn't silence. It was Epic Sunday, a small change, sure, but one that directly targeted a real frustration, giving players a reliable, predictable way to grow their collections instead of relying purely on luck. The same philosophy applied to legendaries. When players wanted a clearer path to actually unlocking them, legendary chests were introduced. Not perfect, but it was something. You knew what you were getting. And for the first time, legendary cards felt attainable. Then came one of the biggest additions the game had ever seen: 2v2. Players wanted a way to play with their friends that wasn't locked behind friendly battles. What they got instead was a casual, social mode that removed pressure entirely, and it ended up becoming one of Clash Royale's most loved features of all time. Even progression control was handed back to the players. When people got tired of pulling legendaries they didn't want, trade tokens were added, a clever way to give people the legendaries they want without increasing drop rates or introducing card requests. Suddenly, progression wasn't just about luck anymore, it was about choice. If you invested time, you could actually move your deck forward. But even with simpler things like balance changes, the community had a lot of impact. Royal Giant is the perfect example. He was infamous for his massive range, creating frustrating, non-interactive gameplay. And instead of ignoring complaints or slapping on small stat tweaks, Supercell reworked him into a card that was healthier for the game. Still strong, but far less obnoxious to face. None of these changes were accidental. They happened because players spoke up, and the game responded. So when did this stop? When did player-first design quietly turn into revenue-first design? I don't blame Supercell for wanting money. Clash Royale is a business, and it always has been. You can't blame a business for wanting to make money. But there needs to be a balance, one where the game makes profit, but the player base can still enjoy the game. The issue isn't that they monetized the game, it's how that monetization slowly changed the priorities behind the updates. And there hasn't been a single update you can point to and say, this is when everything went wrong. The shift was gradual, subtle, almost reasonable at first. But a strong place to start is the summer of 2019, with the introduction of Pass Royale. On paper, Pass Royale looked harmless, even generous, a low-cost monthly pass filled with rewards, cosmetics, and quality-of-life perks. Compared to aggressive shop offers or pure pay-to-win systems, it felt fair, almost player-friendly, and early on, it was. But Pass Royale marked a philosophical shift. Before this, monetization mostly lived around the game. Chests, shop offers, optional shortcuts. With Pass Royale, monetization moved into the core progression loop itself. Progress wasn't just about how well or how often you played anymore. It was about whether you were on the paid track or the free one. While it offered a cheaper alternative for maxing cards and unlocking new cards, it inevitably created a significant divide between players who spent money and those who didn't. This disparity became especially noticeable in early 2021 when the Book of Books was added to the pass. At the time, this was before champions were introduced, so the Book of Books essentially provided access to around 20 legendaries each month, a huge boost for anyone playing. Free-to-play players, on the other hand, were left without these powerful cards and missed out on a host of extra perks, including chest queuing, continuing challenges, and other rewards that made progression much easier. The divide only widened in October of 2021 when Clash Royale saw a major shift in monetization. For the first time in nearly 6 years, a new level was added, with level 14 bringing higher card levels and new challenges. Now, it's important to understand that these level increases didn't actually add any new content. A level 14 card plays exactly the same as a level 13 card. The interactions, the mechanics, the strategies, everything stays the same. The only difference is that a higher level card hits harder and survives longer. So really what level 14 did was create a new kind of imbalance, not a new kind of gameplay. Suddenly players with level 14 cards had an edge over those still at level 13, and every interaction became less about skill and more about who had spent more to reach that level. It wasn't adding content, it was adding advantage. And that made the gap between paying and free-to-play players even more obvious. Then there was the infamous Clash Royale incident, and this one really rubbed players the wrong way. During the event, players were heavily encouraged to upgrade their cards with huge discounts and extra rewards. On the surface, it seemed like a great deal, but shortly after, level 14 was announced. With that update, the gold and card requirements for maxing cards was reduced across the board. What that meant is that anyone who had upgraded their cards during Clash Royale suddenly lost potential value. The epics and legendaries they had spent gold and magic items on could have been upgraded more efficiently if they had waited. Essentially, the event tricked players into spending resources too early, leaving them feeling frustrated and misled. It wasn't just about lost gold, it was about the sense that the game had nudged you into making the wrong choice, creating a lot of tension between paying and free players and highlighting just how sharp the divide had become. On top of that, champions arrived, cards that were even harder to unlock than legendaries and also very powerful. Suddenly, the Book of Books from earlier in the year became even more valuable, making the gap between paying and non-paying players feel wider than ever. What had started as a convenience for players seeking faster progression had transformed into a system that amplified the difference in power and access between free and paying players, fundamentally changing how the game felt for each group. Around this time, card releases had also started to feel stale. New cards were coming out less frequently, and when they did, it was usually just one at a time. So there wasn't really much new content to get excited about, and there wasn't anything to compensate for all the frustrating updates, like level 14 or Clash Royale. And for many players, the game started to feel slower, less rewarding, and more about keeping up with power than discovering anything genuinely new. Now let's talk about what some players are calling the update for losers. This update, which rolled out on March 27th, might be one of the worst updates in Clash Royale history. And it all started with the Gold Pass. One of the biggest changes was the removal of the Book of Books. This magic item had been a cornerstone for upgrading champions efficiently. And without it, upgrading now feels much harder. At the same time, the value of the Gold Pass itself decreased, even as the price went up by $1. To make matters worse, the new Diamond Pass, priced at $12, offers worse value than the previous $5 pass. Its only real exclusive reward is an animated banner, which looks nice, but does nothing for progression. Hardly justification for such a steep price increase. Another unpopular change was the removal of chests from 2v2 matches. For many players, this was a fun way to casually earn rewards with friends. Losing it makes you wonder about the direction the game is heading. The update itself also felt really underwhelming. At this time, it had been more than 4 months since a proper update, and all we got were some small changes to Clash Royale and events. No new card, no significant quality of life updates, and no fresh game modes. In fact, during this time, we hadn't seen a new card in nearly 6 months. And the community made it very clear. The YouTube video for this update has 170,000 dislikes and only 70,000 likes, and the comments were even more brutal, with people saying things like, "Been playing since launch. This update marks the last time I'll be active. This is horrible. Thanks Supercell for the hours of entertainment over the years, and thanks to all the great people I've met or battled. Maybe you should have an update where you take suggestions for the player base." And what came only a few months later only made things worse. And then came level 15 and evolutions. And honestly, this was one of the most controversial moments in Clash Royale history. Level 15 itself was already frustrating. The gap between level 14 and 15 came in less than 2 years, and the devs promoted it as no gold required. But in reality, unlocking level 15 cards required 50,000 elite wild cards, which were a nightmare to obtain. It wasn't just about getting to level 15, it was about how it was promoted, with promises of no gold, while still making players grind or spend heavily to actually reach it. And if that wasn't enough, evolutions dropped at the same time. Evolutions are now an intricate, balanced part of the game. Well, not always balanced, but compared to June of 2023, they definitely are now. Because at launch, they were insanely overpowered. You couldn't realistically get more than one evolution without paying because wild shards were brand new, you couldn't stockpile them, and the only available offer to buy them directly was a $100 bundle. And yet, these evolutions were absolutely essential for competing at higher levels. If you didn't have them, you were at a serious disadvantage. And before you say, ARCTO, they weren't that bad, were they? Let's quickly break down the 4 original evolutions and how they impacted the game. Skeletons. The evolved skeletons introduced a completely new mechanic. Every hit spawned an extra skeleton, and on paper this created a snowballing chain of chaos that looked terrifying. But at launch, they weren't broken. The evolution required 3 cycles to activate, and only 6 could be on the field at once. That meant in most matches, you'd only evolve them once or twice, and they still died to a simple log or zap. Their usage rate on ladder was just 1.8%. Over the next year, buffs made them much stronger, faster attack speed, lower activation cycles, higher max count, and by 2024 they became one of the most played evolutions in the game, showing just how much potential they had once properly tuned. Firecracker. The evolved Firecracker, released alongside Skeletons, was a complete nightmare on launch. Every spark she shot stacked damage separately, meaning multiple projectiles could hit your Princess Tower individually. And she couldn't even die to arrows, a 3 elixir spell that normally neutralized her. Her area control was absurd, and she could single-handedly shut down pushes across the map. Firecracker wasn't just strong, she was game-breaking. Royal Giant. The evolved Royal Giant was perhaps the most ridiculous at launch. On paper, he seemed like a slightly tankier version of himself, maybe with a few flashy effects, but in practice, absolute chaos. He had 30% more health and a knockback effect so powerful it would literally push units like Mini P.E.K.K.A. back across the arena without taking a swing. With rage support, he could infinitely shove melee troops back while pounding towers. This was a massive offensive advantage, and for many matches, it felt downright unfair. Barbarians. Evolved Barbarians were the least impactful of the original 4. They got a temporary rage boost on spawn, increasing their attack speed briefly. On paper, that sounded terrifying, but in practice, they never felt as strong as Firecracker or Royal Giant, and compared to Skeletons, their snowballing value wasn't there. And since you could only run 1 evolution per deck, Evolved Barbarians were often overlooked in favor of the other, far more oppressive options. The bottom line, while Skeletons and Barbarians were interesting and had their moments, Firecracker and Royal Giant were absolutely broken at launch. They created an environment where spending money to access evolutions wasn't just advantageous, it was almost mandatory. Players without them were at a massive disadvantage, and matches were increasingly decided by who had the stronger evolution rather than skill. Level 15 and evolutions didn't just raise the power ceiling, they amplified the divide between paying and free players, introduced mechanics that were immediately overpowered, and changed the meta in ways that made the early game feel irrelevant. It was a controversial period, and for many, it was one of the most frustrating moments in Clash Royale history. And it's not like it was just these 4 evolutions. Every month, a new evolution dropped, and each one was incredibly strong. And guess what? The only way to acquire them was through Clash Royale. By this point, even long-term players had uninstalled the game, fed up with the absolute greed on display. Throughout the rest of 2023 and 2024, this sentiment didn't change. Players were frustrated and the game's reputation was suffering. The game was clearly on a decline, updates tried to breathe life back into it, but the damage had been done. Clash Royale was slowly, but surely, dying. But then a miracle happened. A streamer named Jinxy picked up the game after years of not playing. And something clicked for him. He had a lot of fun, and honestly, I don't blame him. The concept of evolutions is genuinely awesome, and the core gameplay of Clash Royale is near perfect for a mobile game. So of course, it was still possible to enjoy the game, especially if you hadn't been around for the worst updates. Jinxy didn't just enjoy it quietly though, he showed off how fun Clash Royale could be to both new players and those who had quit years ago. Collaborations with Ken, Riley, and streaming the game every day helped bring the community back. It's no coincidence that interest in the game hit its highest level nearly 10 years after release. Jinxy undoubtedly played a huge role in reviving it. Meanwhile, Clash Royale kept dropping new evolutions as usual, and we saw some exciting reworks like Goblin Hut, Furnace, and even the Three Musketeers got updates, but the meta remained toxic, and very little was done to fix the underlying issues. At least the game was playable and fun. The Spirit Empress was unique, merged tactics, introduced a whole new way to play, and the game still had moments of excitement. But just when things seemed stable, a new shakeup arrived. Elite wildcards were removed. Players immediately started speculating, what could this mean? And about a week later, it became clear. Level 16 was announced, and so were Heroes. The reaction was devastating. When Heroes went live, it became painfully obvious that they were super overpowered and heavily pay to win, with abilities locked behind yet another paywall. Sure, the elite wildcard system was gone, but that meant nothing when the cost of competing had just skyrocketed. The divide between paying and free players had once again widened, and the frustration that had built up over the years only intensified. And the numbers reflect everything. Despite Heroes and Level 16 being introduced to make money, the difference between October and December is already huge in revenue, dropping from 74 million USD in revenue down to 58 million in December. And even looking at Google Trends, we can see that it dropped from 100% interest to a sad 42. And Clash Royale's golden goose, Jinxy, said he won't be coming back until they fix their game. While this is a dark period for the Clash Royale community, deep down, somewhere inside of me, I feel like they can do something to save it to some degree. I don't know, man, this might be cope, but I love this game so much. It's let me build this beautiful community here on YouTube, and I would love to keep it growing with you guys. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I have a feeling that this one might be just for you. I'll see you there.